Hello everyone, I hope y'all are having a good day. Welcome to Lord Pog Gaming, and I'm your humble host, Lord Pog. You honor me here with your presence. So I know it's been a while since I've done anything on my channel, and the reason for that, quick disclaimer here, I have been in and out of the hospital for, darn near 2 months now. I had an illness that was pretty life-threatening, and yeah, I mean, it was pretty rough, and I just really haven't had it in me to do any more or anything more with the channel, I guess I should say. So I'm probably going to make a lot of mistakes on this video because I'm a little rusty, but I will do my best. Also, if you hear any background noises, I just got a new puppy. She's a border collie. I named her Pomni. Well, it was my daughter's suggestion. My daughter's in love with this show called Digital Circus, and it's not a terrible show, so I named her Pomni. So you might hear her whine every once in a while, but I'll do my best to keep that to the bare minimum. If you're new to my little corner of YouTube, then you found your way because of our shared love of gaming. So I welcome you with open arms, since all are welcome here. This is a channel that truly believes in escaping the real world issues, as is what gaming is really meant to do. Games don't just do this, however, so do movies, and I believe both mediums are supposed to do this anyways. But before we get into all of that and we delve into why we're even doing this video today, first let me do my sales pitch for the channel. If you like what I do here, then please like and share.
Your daisy if you do.
As it helps my channel grow. Plus, if you are new, feel free to subscribe. Seriously, it gives me the confidence that I don't normally feel. It's a feeling of accomplishment that only y'all can bring, and I love y'all for making me feel like I'm good at something. Oh yeah, don't forget to sign my guest book either. That's what I call my comment section, my guest book. And ring my bell for notifications about the channel anytime I drop a video. And I will try to start making videos more often again. Now, okay, I won't harp on any of this.
I don't like to harp on a subject.
I don't care. It comes with me, never have. That's why they call me gregarious.
As I really don't like to do that. And let's get past the shameless plug of this channel. So as I said before, I believe gaming and movies should be a form of escapism. They help us escape real world issues and conflicts that plague and divide people every day. Not just gaming though. Movies do this as well. While I agree that there are games and movies that can tackle some of these subjects, some of the more nuanced and in-depth subjects, in a ways that can cause the audience to reflect and ponder these real world issues, these things that divide us sometimes, the best ones never take a stand on either side. They don't try to build one side up by making another feel bad for what they believe in. They showcase the strengths and weaknesses of each points of view, leaving us, the audience, captivated. And sometimes it changes our mind, and sometimes we look inward and take stock of our own convictions. It's no surprise to longtime viewers of this channel that while I'm not the most eloquent of speakers or a gaming master, nor is my channel the most polished. Like, seriously, it took me like 65 videos till my audio finally started sounding halfway decent. My passion, however, for gaming, I believe, is what drives me on to continue to make videos for all you golden wonders out there. And that's really what this is all about. It's about passion. But besides my passion for gaming, another passion I have is cinema.
I love movies!
Which brings me to today's video. John Carpenter's The Thing. Both the game and movie. I'm really excited about sharing this with y'all. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. Before we begin, I want to give a heavy spoiler warning now. I don't usually have spoilers in my videos, but in order for me to make this one video, there was absolutely no way around it. So if you've never seen John Carpenter's The Thing, then why are you even here? No, I mean really. Seriously, go watch that movie because it's far better than anything you're gonna find in this video. And I can say that with the absolute most confidence. Don't worry about it, I won't be offended. I'll still be here when you get back. But you're missing out on what has to be one of the greatest cinematic sci-fi horror movies of all time. It would be a crime and a devastation for me not to encourage you to not find a way to watch The Thing. So go.
Go. Go away!
Shoot. Alright, for the rest of us and those of you who'd rather stick around than watch the movie first, I must also give a spoiler warning as I'm going to spoil the game that's based on the movie. So if you haven't played the game, it's not going to be as important as first seeing the movie, but if you're a fan of the movie, then I'll preface this by saying that the game is considered canon, like a canon sequel to the movie, but we'll get more into that when we go more in depth to the game. So if you're a fan of the movie, it's going to be important to you if you're one of those diehard fans. So I also suggest you go play the game. For now, I can only ask that y'all be patient
Hold your horses.
and bear with me as we delve into The Thing and everything that is The Thing. The Thing is a 1982 sci-fi horror movie directed by the infamous John Carpenter. And while it's beloved by millions today, believe it or not, it was a box office bomb when it first released. It was more or less bashed by the Los Angeles Times, New York Times, Washington Post, and Roger Ebert, amongst others. So, I guess even then, they didn't know what they were talking about. But I digress. Many said it was too nihilistic, cold, unfeeling, too gruesome, and yes, it has some pretty gnarly practical effects that in my mind still hold up today. But again, I can't help but reiterate how much these critics just are out of touch with people, with the audiences. Yet what the news didn't know then, which is pretty par for the course, when it comes to news outlets, is that the movie they were speaking so unaffectionately about would one day become a piece of cinema that folks like myself and you Golden Wonders out there would watch, rewatch, then analyze over and over again, looking for its hidden meanings, its more secretive plots, while developing theories about its true ending, even decades later. Even to this day, one can look up over dozens of fan theories here on YouTube, ranging anywhere from the order of who got infected first, in what order were the people infected, to if Childs was really the Thing all along. What John Carpenter created in The Thing is truly a testament to cinematic history. But it wasn't originally his vision. In fact, it's loosely based upon a 1951 horror movie called The Thing from Another World, which my mama, because yes, that's what I call her, I'm from the South, y'all.
Lay off, man!
She claimed that The Thing from Another World terrified people in its heyday. But what's interesting is that movie was loosely based upon a 1938 sci-fi horror story written by John W. Campbell called Who Goes There? John Carpenter's The Thing would get a prequel movie in 2011, also titled The Thing, but if I'm being honest, it wasn't that good, or wasn't as good, to be fair. So we'll not delve too much into that for now, but for the sake of brevity, I will talk about it a little later on, and why, in my mind, it dropped the plot. For now, it's important to note that from Who Goes There all the way to John Carpenter's The Thing, this story has been a huge influence in science fiction horror, creating a dedicated fan base that, like I said before, has been trying to unravel its mysteries for decades. Which brings me to the point of this video, because I know there was a less long-winded way of getting to this point, but to make a long story short,
You're a bit late for that!
I think I finally come up with what the actual ending is, as to say what actually happened in The Thing. So if you Golden Wonders can ride this crazy train with me,
I'm going off the rails on a crazy train.
I'd like to add my name into the hat of fan theories, while trying to make this a one-stop shop like I did with my Joker video. Because yes, I did a video on the Joker, which you should totally check out. Card for that here if it tickle your fancy. I am going to present to you at the end of all of this my fan theory about The Thing. But before we get there, much like in my Joker video, we have to first begin at the beginning. In order for me to have developed my own fan theory, I had to first draw upon every ounce of lore about The Thing. In turn, that requires me to relay my discoveries to you Golden Wonders out there.
I made you some content that I made you your favorite open wide.
Doing this allows y'all to fully grasp why I have the theory that I do. This will also enable me to fully express my vision. Plus, not just John Carpenter's movie, but the whole history of The Thing is captivating and deserves, nay, it needs to be shared. It all starts with the aforementioned Who Goes There by John W. Campbell, who wrote the story under the pen name Don A. Stewart, who Isaac Asimov, the creator of stories such as I, Robot and Foundation, said that Campbell was the most powerful force in science fiction ever. John Wood Campbell Jr. was born in 1910 in New York, New Jersey, and from an early age, I believe he had already begun receiving inspiration for Who Goes There. His mother Dorothy had an identical twin who very much had a distaste for Campbell. Often, he wouldn't be able to tell the difference between his mother and aunt, which would lead to harmful rebukes from Campbell's aunt, and my guess is the rebukes were a result of the natural want of attention from one's own mother when they are a child, and Campbell would seek that attention from his mother, but it would accidentally be his aunt. And since Campbell couldn't tell the difference, it caused him a lot of problems, like the rebukes from his aunt. This probably instilled a sense of distrust in Campbell, a distrust that is apparent in the story Who Goes There, and subsequently, The Thing. In Who Goes There, as The Thing, because that's what they call it even in this version, The Thing begins to assimilate more and more of the research team in Antarctica. The characters begin to distrust what and who they know. Now, they can't be sure if the person they are talking to is who they say they are, or the Thing in disguise. Because Campbell experienced this as a young man, not knowing if who he was speaking to was really his mother or his aunt, who despised him so much. You can now see why this influence probably helped develop The Thing. Now, Campbell's history is an interesting one. Campbell attended Blair Academy and MIT, flunking out of both before graduating from Duke University with a bachelor's in science and physics in 1934. What's interesting to note is how much Campbell had his finger on the pulse of the scientific world in those days. Not only did he know many science fiction and fantasy authors like Isaac Asimov and Michael Moorcock, who, if you don't know who Michael Moorcock is, he wrote the Elric series. While attending MIT, Campbell befriended Norbert Wiener. Now, until researching Campbell's life, I had no idea who Norbert Wiener was. And if you did, if you knew who he was, then congratulations.
Check out the big brain on bread.
Norbert Wiener is the man who came up with the phrase cybernetics, and was a huge part, if not the godfather, of its development. Campbell became known for playing the devil's advocate on a lot of hot button issues that I'm not really going to go into because that's not really what this is about. And mainly because I want this video to be about escaping the problematic topics of everyday life. But however, you're welcome to research Campbell on your own. Just be warned, if you're the sensitive type, he might offend you. I will say that for his part, most who knew Campbell, though, didn't wholeheartedly believe that he really believed in half of what he said. Yet he rather would take these stances in order to create more thought-provoking debate, to which I believe is the true mark of creativity. So, Disney, quit talking down to the audience, alright? Are you listening, Disney? So now that we have a better understanding of the man, let's really look at his most influential work, Who Goes There? By the end of this video, when I present my fan theory for John Carpenter's The Thing, this story will play a big role in it actually. And yes, I'm going to be spoiling it. Should you still read it? Yes, because despite me spoiling it, I am going to do the nuance no justice. None.
Move this man!
Who Goes There follows a research team in Antarctica who discovered a ship of extraterrestrial origins buried in the ice. It crashed on Earth 20 million years ago.
Come on now, you expect me to believe that?
Before being discovered by said research team, who accidentally destroy it when digging it up, but unleash the Thing as a consequence. The Thing begins to clap everyone's cheeks, assimilating a lot of the crew, as the cast of the story is much larger than any of the adaptations that has followed the story. Many familiar names from John Carpenter's movie are present, like MacReady, who in the story is second in command and a meteorologist. Characters like Blair and Copper are also in the story, with slight differences from the movie, with Blair being the one responsible for unleashing the Thing in the story.
Has that ever happened to you?
As a result, Blair becomes racked with guilt and vows to kill the crew in order to stop the Thing, but ends up locked in a tool shed. His story closely parallels his character in the movie, with a few exceptions that we'll get into when we get to the Thing. But for now, try and remember some of these factoids. After being thawed out, the Thing first attacks the physicist Comet, but then is discovered trying to become a sled dog. Pretty soon paranoia spreads throughout the crew, and they develop the Rule of 4. The Rule of 4 is that the crew must remain in groups of 4 at all times, so that one man is under scrutiny of the other 3. They also agree to disable any way of escaping the research facility, while also pretending everything is fine during radio transmissions, so they don't risk any rescue attempts, because they're trying to contain the Thing. As the story progresses, MacReady figures out that the Thing's individual cells can act independently of each other, so the infamous heat test is created and conducted by him to the rest of the crew. It's also important to mention that while Comet was being tested before the heat test, his tests were inconclusive because of tampering by either Copper or Gary. Gary is also a familiar name from the movie. 14 members. Yes, that's right. 14 members, because I told you the cast of this story is much larger than the movies, any of the adaptations. 14 members are executed as a result of MacReady's heat test. It's also discovered that both Comet and Gary were the Thing all along, and Gary is the one that tampered with the test that was originally given to Comet. There's some great foreshadowing at this point that I bet dollars to donuts helped John Carpenter with his version, as when the crew are headed to test Blair, who's been locked up this entire time, they see an albatross, which is a sign of spring, and they kill it to keep the Thing from infecting it and flying to civilization. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Taylor Coleridge was written in 1797 and tells the tale of a doomed vessel. Perhaps some of you Golden Wonders out there have heard someone in passing say, "Water, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink." Perhaps you've heard them say this when things seem their most dismal. And this would be the poem they got it from. Because in the story, a sailor kills an albatross, which is basically a bad omen for sailors. And it's kind of a bad omen altogether. So you can see the parallels there. So when MacReady and the survivors reach Blair, they discover that Blair has become the Thing. And not only that, but has been left unchecked for a week. By the end of the story, MacReady manages to defeat the Thing with a blowtorch and discovers that the Thing was dangerously close to finishing an anti-gravity device, which would have allowed the Thing to escape. The story on a whole ends with a high note, sorta. While they believe they killed the Thing, there's a way in Campbell's writing that doesn't allow the reader to be so sure. Perhaps someone else became infected in the end, or perhaps the albatross actually escaped. Because they say they shot it. That's the thing. They only say they shot it. But there's no conclusive evidence that the albatross ever went down. Before closing out this section on Who Goes There, I want to go over the Thing's abilities in the story. It can assimilate, shapeshift, is telepathic, not to mention it can literally become boneless and slide under doors and through cracks, which is how Blair was able to come and go from his imprisonment during that week. Keep all these things in mind as we continue, as they will definitely come up again. The first adaptation of Who Goes There was a 1951 film titled The Thing from Another World, and is only loosely based on the source material. In it, the Thing is more of a humanoid, but plant-based life form, capable of creating more of its kind from seed pods. I remember watching it as a child and being more fascinated than frightening, as the Thing is rather resilient. It takes a lot of damage and requires a lot to stop it by the end of the movie. Earlier I said my mama had told me that The Thing from Another World had terrified a lot of people during its original release. Which I bet for its day, it probably was pretty scary for one to imagine an alien wrecking machine that could create others of its kind, and that it might actually exist out there in the galaxy, floating around looking for a world to conquer. Interestingly enough, I watched it on Halloween night, just like the kids Tommy and Lindsay in the original Halloween movie, also directed by John Carpenter in 1978. During that, the kids are watching The Thing from Another World, and it was sort of prophetic on John Carpenter's part to include the movie in Halloween. Not to get off on a side tangent here.
Here we go again.
But Halloween is a trilogy. The 3 Halloween Carpenter directed, 1 through 3, are the true Halloween movies, and anything beyond that is cheap imitation. If the movie, for instance, says Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, then they've already dropped the plot. The Shape stopped being Michael the night he ended his sister with a knife, to put it mildly. It's confirmed by Carpenter. Go look it up, and no, I'm not answering any more questions about it at this time. The second film adaptation was more inspired by Who Goes There than an actual direct adaptation, and was called Horror Express, released in 1972. Horror Express stars the 2 very iconic actors, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. That's right, Grand Moff Tarkin and Count Dooku are in this movie. 2 of the greatest villains from before Star Wars was
Rey Skywalker.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Well, the less we get into that, the better. Horror Express takes place in the year 1906 and involves an alien that has been dug up from the ice and is in the process of being transported on the Trans-Siberian Railways. It's revealed through a blood test that the creature, as they don't ever give it the official title, The Thing, can jump from person to person and absorb memories or some such business. There are elements of The Thing from Who Goes There present in the movie, but Horror Express is more of a spiritual cousin than a direct adaptation, as I said before. It's a good movie. We're just gonna call the creature The Thing for the sake of this, but it stalks fellow passengers, and it's a pretty exciting game of cat and mouse. Eventually, it's revealed that the Thing is a formless entity that can inhabit the bodies of others and is trying to build a spaceship to go home. What makes Horror Express wild is that the version of the Thing in it can reanimate its victims, turning them into zombies. That's important to remember, for I believe John Carpenter also drew inspiration from this movie as well. but we'll get more into that in a little bit. Again, just bear with me. This leads to a battle through the train as Christopher Lee has to fight off zombies just to survive. Then he and Peter Cushing get to the section of the train containing the thing, and they send it off a cliff to be blown up. It's pretty cool, and still rather ambiguous as to whether or not the thing actually dies. There is a show on Shudder, based upon the old Stephen King movie Creepshow, that has an episode where actor Justin Long plays a guy named Simon, who invents the equivalent of a VR tanning bed.
Ah, yes. That is Hulk Hogan's signature look. Blonde Chinese hair and the skin of a hot dog. So
Called the Immersopod. I'm just going to call it the Rule 34 bed, and if you know, you know. Simon uses the Rule 34 bed to go into his favorite movie, Horror Express, so he can put the moves on his longtime crush, actress Sylvia Tortosa, who plays Countess Irina Petrovska, who subsequently is played by Hannah Fierman for the show's sake. See, I told you. The Rule 34 bed makes more sense now, doesn't it?
You're all going to hell. Goodbye.
Regardless, if you've never seen the show Creepshow, go check it out on Shudder. It's a pretty decent little show. It's got some hits and it's got some misses, but it's all around a pretty good little show. And if you've never seen the original 2 movies, Creepshow 1 and 2, I suggest checking them out too. Their majority of them are based upon old Stephen King short stories, so it's pretty cool, and it's in comic book format. It's a really neat and an inventive way of making a film. With that said, that's not why we're here, but I thought I had to suggest it. So there's a lot of literature out there based on Who Goes There and John Carpenter's The Thing. For the sake of time, I'm going to buzz through this as I've still got a bit to talk about. If you've made it this far, I want to say I'm truly humbled by your commitment. I can't say it enough, but you honor me with your presence here, and I truly mean that. If you've enjoyed my endeavor, then I ask that you leave a like on the video and share it around. And if you're new, please subscribe. But all that aside, even if none of you Golden Wonders out there like, share, or subscribe, that really doesn't matter. I would appreciate it, but in the long run, what matters is you've taken this journey with me. And so from my heart and soul, I want y'all to know I love you. Okay? Okay, enough with the Hallmark moments.
Now we done feeling our feelings? Because I'd like to get out of this room before we both start growing lady parts.
Let's get back to the video. So Dark Horse has published quite a lot of comics based on John Carpenter's The Thing, with the first comic titled The Thing from Another World and was released in 1991. It acts as a direct sequel to The Thing and is part of a 3-part series with the other 2 titles, The Thing from Another World, Climate of Fear, and The Thing from Another World, Eternal Vows. There was also a standalone comic, The Thing from Another World, Questionable Research, which stands as its own direct sequel to John Carpenter's The Thing. And then finally, in 2011, The Thing, The Northman Nightmare, would be released by Dark Horse as a companion to the prequel movie, The Thing. I've never read any of these, so if any of you Golden Wonders out there have, tell me about it when you sign my guest book. I'm curious if they were any good, and to be honest, Northman Nightmare sounds like an interesting premise. It's set during the time of the Vikings, and a group of them run into the Thing. What's not to love about that? The Vikings and an eldritch cosmic horror. I mean, come on. Let's go. Am I right? William F. Nolan, who wrote Logan's Run, another sci-fi classic that was adapted to film and is really good, and I suggest checking it out, wrote a script for a movie version of Who Goes There, but it was never released by Universal. Later it would be published, but Nolan reduced the number of characters and gave the Thing less abilities in favor of making it more humanoid, kind of like the Thing from Another World. One of the more interesting pieces of media involving adaptations for Who Goes There is a short story titled The Things, written by Peter Watts, where the story is told through the Thing's point of view. That sounds really interesting too, and if any of you out there have read that, let me know. Let me know where you can find it. I mean, I'm going to look for it myself, but if you can find it, give me a heads up. good looking out. There's also been a radio drama, merchandise like shirts and figurines based on Carpenter's The Thing. And so from Who Goes There to the prequel in 2011, The Thing as a concept has endured through the ages, sparking the imaginations of horror and science fiction enthusiasts alike, from movies to books and even radio. Asimov was correct in saying that Campbell's first vision of The Thing from Who Goes There was a force in the science fiction community. I've already talked about the infamous 1982 movie The Thing in regards to its production, and how at first it was panned by critics. John Carpenter has always had a love-hate relationship when it comes to his movies. Audiences usually love them, and Hollywood usually hates them, which just shows how out of touch Hollywood has always been. But despite The Thing's poor reception, it has become a cult classic and is easily in my own personal top 10 movies of all time. So let's take a look at the 3 pieces of media that revolve around Carpenter's vision of The Thing. And again, I have to give a spoiler warning as we're about to delve into 1982's The Thing, the 2002 The Thing video game, and the 2011 prequel The Thing. Isn't it weird that this is the only trilogy where all 3 titles have the same name? I just want to point that out. Anyways, I'll try not to draw this out too badly, as I'm sure this video is going to be long, but I've said that in the past only to realize that the video wasn't that bad in length. However, this may be my longest video yet, as when we're finished here, I am going to share with all you Golden Wonders my fan theory about what really happened in The Thing, and give a final analysis. So we begin canonically with the 2011 prequel film, which will be the easiest and fastest to go through. It's set during the Arctic winter of 1982 as a Swedish...
Hey, Sweden! Not Swedish, Mac, the Norwegian.
Norwegian research team in Antarctica discover an alien spacecraft buried out there in the ice. Paleontologist Kate Lloyd, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead,
I know I have. I've just had the greatest experience. I've made the greatest.
Is recruited by the movie's human antagonist, Dr. Sander Havelson, played by Ulrich Thomsen, to come and assist in the research of what they found in the Arctic. The Thule research team find the Thing in a block of ice, and while drilling into it for testing, they accidentally awaken it. Chaos ensues as the Thing is highly aggressive, and begins to assimilate one crew member after another. At one point it causes Sam Carter, played by Joel Edgerton, a Vietnam War pilot, to crash his helicopter. He survives and urges along with Kate to destroy the Thing. Sam is sort of the male protagonist sidekick to Kate's main character. Halverson is having none of this though, and as a result, the deadly split-faced Thing ends up being created, who promptly wrecks the Thule station further. By the end of the movie, both Kate and Sam go onto the Thing's spacecraft, and Kate believes that she kills the Thing in the following conflict, only to turn around and burn Sam alive as she suspects that he might be the Thing also, since he's missing his earring. Previously, Kate realizes that even though the Thing can mimic whatever it assimilates, it cannot imitate non-organic matter. So things like metal teeth fillers and jewelry are a tell as to whether someone has been assimilated or not. The movie ends with Kate presumably freezing to death inside her snowcat, which makes sense, since, that's a tough set of phrases to say, since she doesn't show up in the following movie or game. The problem with this movie wasn't the cast or the acting, and the story is interesting enough even though all it is showing the viewer the events that were presented as a mystery in the original 1982 film. The real issues are the Thing's behavior and the effects. While 1982's The Thing presented us with some of the best practical special effects ever, that is, to this very day, some of the best special effects a movie has to offer, and better than anything CGI has ever brought us. The 2011 movie decided to go in the way of CGI, and it looks
a big old frozen chunk of shit.
It looks bad, y'all. I'm not even playing. Also, the portrayal of the Thing's behavioral patterns missed the mark for me. As we, the audience, already know that the Thing, if you've seen the original movie, the Thing, while able to hold its own in combat, would rather avoid conflict than engage in it, as its sense of survival supersedes anything else that it might do. Through the benefit of the 1982 movie, we get to see how the Thing would rather stalk and eliminate each adversary quietly over all-out combat. 2011's The Thing seemed all too eager to have the Thing engaged in a frontal assault, even though we know that's not how it operates. To me, it felt like the studio wanted to hurry up and showcase their vision of the Thing above what could have been a darker and more sinister story. To be fair, I imagine the production felt as if though their hands were tied to some degree. There are instances shown in the original 1982 film that we'll get to here shortly that had to be explained in this movie. With only so much allotted time, they had to find a way to show all the big ahas of the original movie, meaning that perhaps the only way to squeeze all of that in was to make the Thing uber aggressive, while simultaneously dedicating time to the characters of the film to help flesh out their personalities. So it's not an enviable task, to say the least, and they somewhat failed in this task. And yet it's not a terrible movie, it's just good for what it is, but disappointing in its execution. And as I was creating this video, I got to thinking about this movie, and I realized I probably ain't giving it as much of a fair shake as I should, considering it is good for what it is. It really is. And a part of this trilogy, there's always a installment that isn't as good. Godfather 3 was nowhere near as good as Godfathers 1 and 2, for instance. And technically this is the third movie in the trilogy. So again, in all fairness, I suggest checking it out just so you can get a better idea of who the Thing is. And we will get into that more when I get to my theory, because in developing my theory, I realized I wasn't giving this movie as fair of a shake as I should have. Again, we'll get there, so put a pin in that. 1982's The Thing picks up almost exactly where the prequel leaves off, by showcasing all of its characters. This is a superior movie in every way, and you know it is because they found a way to squeeze in all the elements of horror that this movie presents while giving every individual in the cast their own personality. Something that, like I said before, the prequel wasn't able to really do. There's a lot of familiar names from Who Goes There that show up in this movie, with the most important one being R.J. McCready, the main protagonist from Who Goes There. Now, the differences here are the spelling of the names, for one. And in John Carpenter's The Thing, they tacked on the RJ. Plus, he's no longer a scientist, but a pilot, going from the intellectual hero to the everyman who finds himself in a situation that's beyond him. A helicopter is flying through the air chasing a sled dog, shooting at the dog in an attempt to put it down. In the 2011 prequel, we see at the very end that two men manage to survive the Thule station, only to see that the Thing has assimilated a sled dog. The dog Thing runs away, and the two men give chase in hopes of stopping the Thing from escaping. The dog Thing makes its way to the American research station Outpost 31, where we see all of the characters going about their daily routines. This establishes their personalities. Some are playing ping pong, some are cooking, and McCready is playing chess against a computer. It's here we get our first glimpse into Mac Creedy's character, played by Kurt Russell.
Who? Jack Burton. Me.
He's sitting there drinking JB, a blended Scotch whiskey. He's winning his chess game against the computer, and the viewer gets a sense that this may be the first time he's about to win, ever, since the look of satisfaction on his face expresses a sense of accomplishment. However, the computer pulls off what some have said is an impossible move, while others have theorized it was just a downright cheat. since it never actually shows the computer screen and what really happens, how it moves, it just tells you. And the look that comes over McCready's face is pure disgust and dismay. I can't actually speak on really if it was just a really impossible move for it to pull off or it just cheated because it wanted to win. What I can say, however, is the frustration from Mac, and that's what they call him in the movie, Mac, constantly, so I'm probably just going to call him that myself. The frustration from Mac is 100% relatable, as after he loses, he takes his cup of JB and pours it in the computer's motherboard, frying it for good.
Cheeky bitch.
I don't know about any of you, but even to this day when I get frustrated with the game, I'll say the words, "This game is cheating," even when I know it's not really. It's just following its programming to win. I've literally known people who have snapped controllers in half out of anger, while a buddy of mine one time stood up and stomped a drinking glass to pieces. So yeah, the struggle is real, and it's really real for me because I'm really not that good at video games, I'm just passionate about them. So the dog thing approaches Outpost 31, and Bennings, played by Peter Maloney, is accidentally shot. Now, since this was technically the first movie in the Thing trilogy, the audience doesn't know what is going on here yet. But if anyone watching at the time had been fluent in Norwegian, then they would have had a huge clue dropped in their laps, as the Norwegian who's trying to end the dog thing says in his own language that the dog isn't really a dog. In so many words, he tries to explain to the men what's actually happening, but is shot down by Gary, played by Donald Moffat, who, as mentioned before, is one of the characters from Who Goes There. The helicopter the Norwegian came in is accidentally blown up, so this eliminates any clues from Outpost 31. And I believe I'm getting this scenario mixed up a little bit. I think he accidentally blows up the helicopter before he even gets shot by Gary, and it's blown up by the Norwegian, killing the other Norwegian who is flying the helicopter, and it's a really goofy scene. Not to spoil the movie too much, but since I'm spoiling it anyways, he goes to throw a grenade and accidentally slings it back to throw it and accidentally throws it behind himself and throws it at the helicopter and it blows up. And as goofy as that sounds, it is relatable, because have you ever been so agitated and in such a rush because you know you have to get something done and everything just seems to go wrong? You know, the issue is when you feel rushed to get something done, you have all that burden upon your shoulders, I guess, for a lack of a better word, to get this one project done. So you're trying to rush through it, you're trying to get it done, and nothing seems to go right. That's kind of the scenario that we're seeing here with this Norwegian and this grenade. He's in such a panic to get this dog that he just makes a whoopsie and blows up his own helicopter. It's silly, but oddly relatable. So without any clues as to what just happened, and McCready dropping the line, "First week of winter,"
First goddamn week of winter.
we have a definite timeline now for the events between the prequel and the Thing. Eventually McCready and Copper, played by Richard Dysart, yet another familiar name from Who Goes There, leave to investigate the Thule research base from the prequel. While there, we get to see the aftermath from all of the events of the prequel. But at the time this movie aired, it helped to create the mystery of the movie, because we didn't actually know what had happened yet. All we knew at the time was something extremely bad took place. But little hints as to what that bad thing, pardon the pun, was, are sprinkled throughout as they investigate. This creates the eerie atmosphere and the sinister feel of the movie, which is kind of why I feel like the prequel dropped the ball as well, because the movie could have been really sinister, because The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, sets this up as a sinister thing that happened here. And I keep saying thing a lot. It's hard to talk about a movie called The Thing and not say The Thing at the same time, so you have to forgive me. While this is taking place, the dog thing is left to roam around Outpost 31 unchecked. It takes its first victim, but we aren't shown who. We only get to see their silhouette on a wall. Many speculated on who this could have been, and judging by the shadow, there's a definite case to be made, but we'll get more into that with my own theory later on. Eventually, Clark, yes, once again, there is another character from Who Goes There, played by Richard Masur, who's the dog handler, puts the dog thing in the kennel with the other dogs. You can tell that Clark really cares for these dogs, as when the dog thing first reaches Outpost 31, Clark is the first to concern himself with the dog over the issue of why the Norwegian was acting so crazy. He speaks gently to the dog thing, and oddly enough, it gravitates toward him right off the bat. Sim can argue that this is the dog thing's way of trying to infect Clark because it cozies up to him, but I also have an odd theory involving this interaction. The dog thing begins to assimilate the other dogs. It's brutal and downright awesome. It is an awesome set of visuals. However, the commotion of the whole ordeal allows the crew to become aware of the thing's presence, and the movie goes into full tilt after this. Blair, played by Wilford Brimley,
I'll kill you!
Diabetes.
a reoccurring character and name, learns about what the thing's capabilities are and goes crazy. Because we know that Blair was in Who Goes There as well, and we're about to get into the parallels, as I said before, from his character in this movie to his character in that story. And out of all the characters, he's probably the one that mimics his original character the most. He disables any form of escape from the outpost, destroys their communication, and then tries to kill a few of the crew just for good measure. Blair is first tipped off about what they are dealing with when autopsying the dog thing. I must point out that he touches it with the eraser of his pencil while examining it, then to his own lips in thought. Oftentimes in movies, characters who deal with dead bodies on a regular basis are portrayed in this way, able to touch the dead while eating a sandwich, for example. So this wasn't entirely weird for first-time viewers, if not a little off-putting though. It's when Blair fully realizes how the thing operates, that this moment of the eraser to lips, that the audience knows that Blair might be in trouble. For his efforts to prevent a worldwide invasion, Blair is apprehended, then quarantined by MacReady, who is sort of taking charge of the situation. We see the dog thing's body oozing off a table, and it attacks Bennings. The crew torch Bennings, and now are coming to the same realization that Blair had. Paranoia starts to spread throughout Outpost 31 as more and more members are assimilated, but no one can be sure who has been assimilated. Fuchs, played by Joel Polis, an assistant biologist, seems to be the only one piecing what's going on together. The fullest, I should say. But then he disappears, with only the remains of him being found are his shredded clothes. MacReady surmises that Fuchs might have burned himself alive to keep from being assimilated, but also remarks when recording a sort of log of events taking place that he believes that when the thing assimilates someone, it rips through their clothes, which harkens back to Kate's discovery about it being unable to reproduce unorganic matter. It's a famous scene, and you can just hear how tired MacReady is as he comments on how no one trusts each other anymore. The crew become paranoid of MacReady when the cook Knowles, played by T.K. Carter, finds a torn up piece of uniform belonging to MacReady. Childs, played by Keith David, who is the main secondary character, takes charge and tries to leave MacReady outside to freeze in the sub-zero Arctic conditions. Physicality ensues, and Norris, played by Charles Hallahan, who's sort of a mixture of characters from Who Goes There, has a heart attack and dies, but is then revealed to be the Thing, which leads to one of the most awesome scenes in science fiction history. Seriously, if you don't watch anything else, stop this video, look up The Thing Death by Defibrillator on YouTube. Go look at it, then come back. But be warned, if you haven't seen this movie and you have a weak stomach, it's just gnarly. It's just a gnarly scene. But man, did it blow me away when I first saw this movie as a kid. So Norris almost escapes, but is pointed out by Palmer, played by David Clennon. And Norris's head is torched. Yes, his head is torched. Amongst all of this, MacReady shoots Clark, who tries to attack him, and also figures out a way to test to see who's been assimilated by the Thing. They take blood samples and test them with heat, Also, they check on Blair, who seems to have become more calm, saying he wants to come back inside, that he keeps hearing strange noises out there since where he's been quarantined is in a shed outside of the main facility. There's also a noose hanging from the ceiling indicating that Blair's been having some dark thoughts, if you know what I mean. And he warns MacReady about Clark, saying to watch him closely. Which is why when Clark goes to attack MacReady, it's probably because Blair's warning that he's able to put him down with little regard to it. Because, I mean, MacReady pops him right between the eyes with no remorse. He just does it. During the blood test, we see that Clark wasn't in fact infected, which leads Childs to comment about how MacReady killed an innocent man. Now, Childs, in my opinion, is the most paranoid out of all of them. He doesn't trust anyone, and even though he admonishes MacReady over what he did to Clark, Childs would have done the same with a lot less provocation. As we saw, Childs tried to leave MacReady out in sub-zero temperatures. Palmer is revealed at this time to be the Thing, and he kills Radio, played by Thomas Waits. The blood reacts severely to heat, causing MacReady to drop the dish of blood. The blood streaks across the floor as if alive, confirming that the suspicion that each of the Thing's cells can act independently of each other is correct.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
After Palmer is dealt with, we learn that everyone else is still human, and MacReady devises a plan to finish off the Thing once and for all. He surmises that none of them are going to survive the winter trying to fend it off, so instead they need to go down swinging by torching Outpost 31. They learn that Blair has become infected and was trying to build a spaceship to escape. Childs goes missing, and in the climax both Knowles and Gary are killed before the final showdown between MacReady and the Thing's final form. It's a monstrous amalgamation of tentacle with a dog head, human heads, all just intertwined inside of it. MacReady drops one of the best lines in the movie. Yeah, fuck you too! Then blows it up with a stick of dynamite. This concludes with the famous scene of Childs showing back up to supposedly freeze to death with MacReady. They share a drink together, and the credits roll, leaving many to this day to wonder, did the Thing really die? Many have speculated that Childs may have been the Thing, and we'll get more into that during my theory. I know I keep saying this, I sound like a broken record, but please, for now, keep that feather in your cap. The final chapter in this trilogy, within a trilogy, which is weird to say, because yes, the Thing was part of John Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy, and if I may go off yet another second on yet another tangent, the Apocalypse trilogy is probably 5th in my top best trilogies of all times. They are The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness. I highly recommend watching these, as while they aren't directly connected, like interconnected movies, these movies have absolutely no connection, but yet they are a part of a trilogy. They deal with cosmic horror and have the nuance of the end is nigh. And they're just fantastic movies. Check them out. In 2002, John Carpenter's The Thing would get a sequel in the form of a video game. Pog's addendum here. This video is coming to you extremely late. I began working on it long before I got sick, or a little bit before I got sick, and then I did get sick. I have a whole video explaining what happened to me, but to make a long story short, there was a few things that happened while I was in and out of the hospital and dealing with losing my job. And since we're finally talking about the game, I'm going to insert this here. It turns out that The Thing is going to get a remastered version. The release date for that, I don't know. But it was revealed this year in June, so keep your eyes out for that. Perhaps they've fixed the game mechanics a little bit, but usually all remastered means is that it's just going to look a lot better. Anyways, back to the video. And sorry about the quality of this video. Like I said, I was going through a lot, and I'm going to do a lot better at trying to bring you more videos. Thank you. Also titled The Thing. Like I said, this is the only trilogy where all three of them have the same name. I can't say all 3 movies, but The 2 movies and the 1 game all have the same name. It's a third-person action shooter that has squad-based commands, and despite having some wonky controls, was pretty ambitious. It's the game I've had playing in the background this entire time, and while I can't honestly say it won't cause some to rage quit, for the hardcore fans of the Thing series, it's an important game to play to see how the trilogy ends. So I suggest finding it any way you can so you can play it. The game was developed by Computer Artworks and distributed by Black Label Games and Konami for consoles. Black Label Games would become Vivendi Games, who would then merge with Activision to become Activision Blizzard in 2008. Konami is still Konami, and their story is a whole video in and of itself. The player takes control of Captain J.F. Blake of the U.S. Special Forces, who lands his team at Outpost 31. Now, how much time has gone by between the movie and the game is uncertain, but it couldn't have been for more than a month. This is where the player learns the basic controls, as Blake can run, strafe, shoot, use secondary items like grenades and flashlights. What's really interesting is that Blake can command a team of 4 NPCs, but there's only 3 classes of NPC: Soldier, Medic, and Engineer. The Soldier is good for helping in combat. The Medic has unlimited healing abilities for Blake and the others, but cannot heal himself, which is a nice touch. Learning how to manage health kits to keep the Medic alive, but also making sure to have enough for yourself when a Medic isn't available, is just one of the tropes of a survival horror like this, so that's why I think it's a nice touch. Lastly, there's the Engineer, who can repair busted electrical panels, allowing Blake to traverse through electronically closed doors. Blake can repair some of his own, but not all. Blake, for the most part, is a combination of all 3 NPC types. He can fight like the Soldier, heal like the Medic, and repair some electronics. However, he's limited in all 3. The Soldier has better aim, the Medic isn't hindered by having enough med packs, and the Engineer can repair all things. The crosshairs automatically lock onto targets, which is nice, but has its flaws. There's a first-person mode Blake can go into for more accurate shooting, but I suggest only using this from a far, safe distance, since it locks Blake into place. You can't move in third-person view. Enemies can move fast, so even though the game auto-locks on targets, they can still move out of the aim, causing Blake to spend precious ammo on nothing. He's just shooting air. Also, the bigger enemies cannot be killed with just firearms. They have to first be weakened by bullet fire, then torched with a flamethrower. This is my biggest beef with the combat, as the flamethrower doesn't auto-lock and wants to naturally aim at the floor. There's a nifty mechanic where the flamethrower can leave walls of fire to hinder enemy progress, since the thing won't cross through fire, so you'll automatically point at the ground and just leave trails of fire, walls of fire on the ground to give yourself a little bit of breathing room away from the thing that's attacking you. However, unless the player is right up on the thing or in third person mode, you're just burning the ground instead of the enemy 90% of the time. This can cause you to accidentally hurt yourself in many occasions, or your teammates, since yes, friendly fire is a thing in the thing. While being in third person mode, that locks Blake into place, leaving him open to attacks, and getting right up on the thing in third person mode can cause Blake to take damage from the thing and burn himself. It's hard finding the balance there, but with patience it can be done, but it's why I think some players might just toss in the towel on this one. What the game ultimately does right is recreating that sense of distrust between Blake and the NPCs, and that's a huge staple of this series, really. NPCs might not trust Blake right away themselves, and so there are objectives and items Blake can get to and do to prove he's not infected. One of the callbacks between the game and movies is the infamous line, "Now I'm going to show you what I already know."
Now I'll show you what I already know.
That both Blake and McCready say. Blake has to be wary of the NPCs that he meets, since as the game progresses, some of the teammates Blake picks up end up either being infected from the start or becoming infected as you travel. What's so great about this is the sense of distrust the game creates. You get this feeling that they may change into the thing at any time, and most of the time, when they do change, it's at the most inopportune moments, putting Blake in some hairy situations. It really does create a sense of dread every time Blake finds another team member. You eventually are just like, I just want to find a good medic and just be done with it. You know? All the shape-shifting and jump scares can be had here. The different kinds of forms the things take will shift and show these transformations. There are little creature things that have human-like faces but growl like dogs that jump out at you from nowhere. I'm not kidding. While recording my footage for the game, I was on Discord with Android just chatting. He couldn't see what I was doing, but we had gotten quiet because he was working on something and I was just focusing on the game, like hyper-focused. And while walking between two buildings in the game, some of the little things fell onto my head from out of nowhere, growling like man dogs. It made me jump and scream so loud, causing Android to suddenly start laughing. He began telling Casey, 69, his girlfriend, who, just FYI, is a member of one of them old school gamers who plays D&D with us, and I record our sessions, so you might check out some of our back catalog on that if you're so inclined. They are rather long though, so if you're not into D&D and long form videos, I don't blame you, and it's just a podcast, but you might enjoy it. She plays Agaricus, the Myconid. He was laughing and telling her though that whatever just happened to Pog genuinely scared him because he's screaming right now, and he was just laughing at me, and I was like, dude, my heart skipped a beat when that happened. So yeah, the game has a good amount of scares in it too. And it doesn't help that the items can be extremely limited. This is a genuine survival horror. On my initial playthrough, I didn't realize what I was actually getting myself into, so I gave a team member a gun because the first medic you get doesn't have one. He doesn't have any kind of weapon to defend himself. Then you're separated and he takes the gun. If you get separated from him, you give any items to any of the team members and you get separated from them, you lose those items. So I had to travel as Blake alone for a minute. The next team member I met, he didn't trust me until I gave him a weapon. I didn't want to give him my weapon because I only had one weapon, but the game makes it to where you can't progress without him because he's an engineer and you need to fix this thing you can't fix without him. So I had to give him my only weapon, leaving me without one, and so for a good stretch, and I'm not kidding, for a good stretch of this game, this section of the game, I was just running ahead with nothing but a flashlight, spotting enemies, then running for dear life so my teammate could shoot them. The reason why I'm telling you this story is so you're cautious of your equipment should you play this game, or you'll end up with the thing jumping down on top of your head and no weapon to defend yourself with. The plot of the thing is that you investigate Outpost 31, which leads to some revelations in terms of the plot from the previous installments and the game you're about to play. Then Blake goes to the Thule Outpost to investigate what's become of Alpha Team, who is being led by Captain Pierce. Eventually, a whole plot is discovered that the commander leading both teams, Colonel Whitley, plans to spread the Thing virus all over the world. Blake, in a final showdown with Whitley, who has now become a giant tentacle thing, defeats and foils Whitley and flies away in a helicopter. Pretty standard stuff, but I did gloss over some of the more important details. The reason is because I'm going to share them with you Golden Wonders in the final section of this video. My personal Thing theory. But before we get on to that, first let me talk about how well the Thing was received by video game audiences. It did fairly well with mixed reviews. Some complained that the graphics weren't up to par, while others said that the Trust Fear system wasn't quite what it was hyped up to be. Eurogamer's Kristen Reed said that picking up the game cheap wouldn't disappoint gamers, but that the game could have been and should have been brilliant. GameSpy's Tom Ham said that it was a 4 out of 5 for both the PlayStation and Xbox, claiming it to be a solid action game. So there's been some mixed feelings in regards to the game. but in my opinion, I'd say it's a solid 3 out of 5. While I think this game definitely tests the player's trust and has some pretty solid scares, what they did with the flamethrower just makes it needlessly hard, especially when the flamethrower is such a pivotal weapon. Like I said before, for casual players to both gaming and the Thing series as a whole, y'all might not like it and end up walking away. But for those hardcore fans out there, I'm talking to you now. Find it and play it by any means necessary. Well, we're finally here. We finally made it to my theory of what really went down in John Carpenter's The Thing. I want to one more time thank all of you Golden Wonders who followed me down this rabbit hole. Y'all can't imagine how much it means to me. Let's finally get into what I really believe happened. Throughout both the prequel and the 1982 film, we learned some important things about, well, the Thing. It can assimilate other organic life, which is like a shape-shifting ability. The Thing's cells are independent of each other, which is like being able to duplicate your own twin and such. It's highly resistant to damage, fire being one of the only sure ways to put it down. Plus, and something I forgot to mention before, that when Palmer kills Windows in the 1982 movie, Windows' corpse begins to reanimate into the Thing, which isn't something the movie harps on, nor does again beyond this point. But I feel it's important to mention that the Thing can infect fresh corpses, which is something it couldn't do in Who Goes There. We know the one thing it can't do is assimilate unorganic matter, hence why it rips the clothes off its victims, and why things like metal teeth fillings fall out. Yet is it capable of mimicking these things? The reason I titled this video Insidious Machinations is because while we learn a lot about the Thing throughout the trilogy, I don't believe we ever truly learn all of its abilities. The answer lie with Who Goes There, as John Carpenter did state that he wanted to make an adaptation that was closest to the story, without making it a one-to-one remake. This is why so many of the characters have names from the original story. And Blair, out of all the characters, his arc resembles Blair from Who Goes There the closest. I believe that John Carpenter's The Thing has all of the abilities from the Thing from Who Goes There, and it makes sense that Carpenter did this without outright telling the audience, creating more of that cosmic horror feel to his movie. The Thing is beyond our understanding, and so not telling nor showing us adds to the suspense that Carpenter masterfully weaved into the plot. Yet, even though he doesn't show nor really tell, in a way, I guess he does show us, because there's little sprinklings of hints throughout what he's actually doing there if you just pay attention. It serves to create a sense of dread in the back of our minds, while pushing to the forefront a false sense of security as we foolishly believe that we know how to battle the Thing, basing this upon the information we are giving without ever considering what we are unaware of, never taking into account what we don't know, only what we do know.
Why the deception? Deception is the point. Any fool can calculate strength. That one has been doing it for the moment he saw us. Now he has to calculate what he can't see. And fear what he doesn't know.
Which is why the Thing's behavior is more forgivable in the prequel the more I got to thinking about this theory. Since if one thinks about it, the Thing has just awoken after being in hibernation. It's afraid, which oddly enough is a character trait of something that has awoken from deep sleep without knowing where it is. A creature like that would naturally lash out in defense, since we know that its greatest character trait is its instinct for survival. So you could say that its ultra-aggressive nature in the prequel is in fact its sense of survival, which we've come to know it for. That's why the Thing is so aggressive at the Thule station, because it's getting a feel for its surroundings, testing the limitations and combat capabilities of its adversaries, while simultaneously trying to get its bearings. What is hard to reconcile is why the thing attacks Sam and the others on the helicopter. It's an act of aggression that on the surface seems pointless. I've heard some say that it didn't make any sense. Why would the thing attack when it was getting away? To that I say, watch the movie again. It wasn't about to escape at all. In fact, Kate discovers that someone has been infected and signals to Sam to come back. And Sam, seeing Kate signaling to him, decides to land and see what's wrong. Then the thing attacks and causes them to crash the helicopter, which is still sort of a foolish move on the thing's part. There's no way of knowing for sure if Kate would have been able to discover if any of them were the thing right then and there. But odds are, to be safe, Sam and the others would have not been allowed to leave, which means it was a 50-50 chance of the thing going undetected, which would and could give it a chance to infect Sam, for instance, who then could fly the plane out. And before the argument is made that just because Sam can fly doesn't mean the thing can.
Oh, well, allow me to retort.
1. The thing flew its ship to Earth, so it's got some knowledge of piloting. And if it can fly a galaxy-spanning aircraft, I'm sure it can figure out an archaic helicopter. And B, the thing from Who Goes There absorbs memories and almost creates an anti-gravity machine which takes some brains. Lastly, I know this is the Thing trilogy and not Who Goes There. But again, I say that the Thing and Who Goes There and this thing have the same abilities. I think I know why the thing attacked recklessly on the helicopter, but we'll get there. First, let's finish making the case for why the thing acts so different in the prequel. Then we'll move on. In the prequel, the thing is scared. It doesn't know where it is, or what it's fully dealing with. If we include the comic Northman Nightmare, but not the others for reasons we'll get into, Vikings, while tough and for their time very innovative, they weren't highly advanced technologically. So up until now, the only adversaries of humankind the thing has come up against must have seemed primitive to it. And now it's awake and mankind has advanced with great strides. Yet I think humans probably still seem pretty primitive to the thing. Yet here's Kate who's figuring out what and how it operates rapidly. Meaning that at first, the thing probably doesn't take us too seriously until matching wits with Kate. Then it becomes like a chess game. And I believe while on the surface destroying the helicopter seems rash, it's actually a strategic move on the thing's part to throw everyone off its trail, a sort of testing of the waters. Maybe they'll think it's dead from the crash. It's not until the thing witnesses just how paranoid we can be that our form of paranoia matches its paranoia, it actually frightens it. This is why it tries to aggressively begin assimilating the Thule research team, because it doesn't fully comprehend us yet either. By the end, when Kate torches Sam for being the thing, because he totally is, and why that's ever been in question, I'll never know, he even screams like the monster. So it's not really a mystery. The thing fully understands that discretion with humans is the proper way to deal with us. It's the better part of valor, if you will, because just like Kate, we're willing to sacrifice ourselves to achieve victory. Yet the question now arises, even with Sam dead, how would the dog thing know all of this? Well, let's move on to the 1982 movie to further figure out what's actually going on here. I've seen comprehensive lists about who was assimilated first, from Norris being first to Blair being last. While they are neat, I'm not entirely sure that who was infected first can be quantifiable. And that's because what I'm about to say is perhaps one of the most controversial statements made about the topic. Everyone was infected almost immediately. If not 100% affected, if not 100% infected. Everyone had a chance of turning, and at the very least was a carrier. By the time the thing reaches Outpost 31, it's learned all it needs to know about humanity. In the prequel, I don't think it infected everyone, but by this time, I think it's gotten its pattern down and proceeds to infect the group in a more strategic way. It wanders around as the dog thing, sort of sporing everyone to see who can potentially get the virus, because there are actually two ways a person can change into the thing. The movie doesn't explicitly say this, and it's not really delved into in the prequel either, but I do have some evidence for it that I'll share in a bit. In the beginning, everyone becomes a carrier, except McCready and Copper, since they go to the Thule station pretty early on. But the dog thing does stay behind and even rubs up against Benning's leg. Bennings has an open injury from being shot. Dogs shed, leaving their hair follicles that are cells. These independent cells, because we know that the thing's cells can act independent of each other, probably infected him right then and there. So why didn't he begin to change? Because the thing is also referenced as a virus. And like a cancer, the thing can lay dormant if need be. If the prequel is the thing acting like a scared infant, then the Thing of 1982 by John Carpenter is it acting like a strategic adult. It knows what happened the last time. It went toe-to-toe with humans in attack mode, which almost costed it its life. It doesn't plan on risking that again. Instead, it's adopted a more discreet plan of attack, choosing stealth and subterfuge instead. What's unlucky for the Thing is while its first worthy opponent was Kate, a smart, clever, and critical thinker, it yet again has to run into another worthy opponent in MacCready, a strong-willed, hardened, and willing to do whatever it takes kind of person. Remember when I said that the scene when MacCready destroys the computer he's playing chess against is the best insight into who he is? That's because even though, like the Thing, the computer has the better intellect and holds all the strongest cards, has all the best moves, MacCready is willing to fry the computer to win. Just like Mac is willing to blow up Outpost 31 to beat the Thing. Even if it means his life, Mac isn't willing to lose. He destroys the computer, meaning he'll never get to play it again, which is a form of loss for him, just like destroying the Outpost is a loss of his life. But that's just who he is, and the Thing once again discovers the determination of the human spirit, which harkens back to Who Goes There. MacCready in Who Goes There does the heat test as they discover each person who has been infected. The others instantly attack. Like I said, 14 members die in Who Goes There. Every single one of them who gets discovered, the others just instantly attack him. And it goes into detail about how some of them get ripped apart by the humans with their bare hands. And MacCready just sits there and kind of revels in it. It's kind of an odd little scenario. He watches the other members of the station rip the things apart with their bare hands, and he revels in the human spirit to survive. And it's weird, but there is a parallel being made here in how the Thing keeps discovering the human will to survive, and how it just the Thing thinks that it keeps figuring us out, and it keeps meeting exceptional ones of members of the human race who just keep throwing it for a loop. First with Kate, and now with Mac. People often, when watching the Thing, focus on that bottle of JB and seem to think that this is a clue that shows that Childs is actually the Thing in the end. Forgive me, but this is incorrect. The JB is important, but it's only important as another insight into who Mac is. He's an everyman, not some high-educated scientist, but a blue-collar guy who has wisdom over intelligence, to use a D&D analogy. If you play D&D, then you should know that intelligence is like book smarts, while wisdom is like street smarts. Or the equivalent of a college professor and a farmer. One can only stand at a podium and speak on something he has knowledge about. The other can actually put the knowledge they have to use. When MacCready shares a drink with Childs at the end, it isn't a test to see if Childs is the Thing. He's just one survivor sharing a drink with another. See, because Childs, unlike Sam, is a secondary character who's almost as resilient as the main. See, Sam was just following Kate's lead most of the time. Childs and MacReady butt heads through the whole thing. In fact, if MacReady didn't exist, Childs is just as capable of survival as MacReady in that sense. If MacReady wasn't even in the movie, Childs could have been the main character. And it creates an interesting dynamic between the two of them if you really think about it, because it's almost like they're two main characters. We're just following Mac. While Sam and Kate form a bond of trust and work together, for instance, Mac and Childs are equally paranoid. And so their bond really isn't strong until the very end, if that makes any sense, because they share that drink. That is the beginning of the Sam and Kate bond, if you will. The real test at the end is Childs and MacReady test each other. It's not just one test. Childs suggests that maybe one of them are the thing, and MacReady answers that if either of them have any surprises for the other, they're in no position to deal with it. This is in fact a test being done by both of them, since neither Childs or Mac at this point are infected. But Mac has become a carrier. See, Childs asks that question to see if he can goat the thing out of hiding if Mac is the thing. And Mac responds in such a way as to make it seem he's too weak to fight anymore. While if either of them were the thing, neither man had any intention of not continuing the fight. While if either of them were the thing, neither man truly had any intention of not continuing the fight. Childs is far too paranoid to allow something like the thing to survive. Hence why he vanishes for a while. Childs' biggest concern is Childs. So when the outpost's lights get cut off, he bails. If it means winning, Mac has already shown that he's willing to burn it all down.
We're just hanging around, burning it down.
If it means winning. So his response is just a ploy to see if he can goat the thing into revealing itself. Neither man changes. So Mac laughs, knowing that somehow they're the only two who made it. But are they? I've held back on talking about the biggest point of my theory so far, because up until now, it wouldn't have made any sense. But now I think it is the time. See, throughout the two movies, there's one character that we see, but not often enough that it registers. See, one of the thing's abilities is telepathy, and the ability to project mental images. So how are we sure about anything that any of the characters see or hear? Carpenter definitely downplayed the ability to mental project sights and sounds, but not the telepathy, nor the shapeshifting. In the video game, which has been stated by John Carpenter, that the game is in fact a canon sequel to the movie, and he even makes a cameo in it, which is why the other comic books by Dark Horse are not canon, and I don't mention them in this theory. And I said I'd get back to that. That's why the Northman Nightmare is the only comic book that is canon to this, but the others are not. So while Blake is inspecting Outpost 31, he discovers MacReady's recordings, which is a neat little Easter egg. But he also discovers two other things that hold more gravity to my theory. One is the frozen corpse of Childs, proving that he was never the thing, and now we know his fate. He died out there. He froze to death. If he had been the thing, he wouldn't have froze to death. Or at the very least, he would have hibernated, and the second they found his body, he would have worked to infect them. But neither happened. He's just passed away. The other evidence we find is a 5-page report talking about the thing, which I believe was written by Fuchs. I haven't talked much about Fuchs, other than I think that before he dies in the thing, he comes closer than Blair to discovering how the thing works. Mac often relies on suggestions from Fuchs as a sort of advisor, with Fuchs mentioning after having researched more that everyone should prepare their own food and eat only from cans. This is pivotal in so many ways, because one, it lets us know that the thing has many tricks in which it can come into contact with a potential victim. Not just brute force, as if it were a virus. 2, that it must struggle with metal and materials of that kind, much like Kate discovered. A tightly sealed can of baked beans, for example, may be next to impossible for the thing to breach, but a door with seams, not so much. The report in the game also states, and this is big, that a person just coming into contact with the thing has a 50 to 70% chance of being infected, making it more like a pathogen. Also, once it does assimilate a victim, it can then form its body to mimic clothing. So while it shreds the clothes the victim is wearing, the thing is capable of imitating what they have on. It can't do this with metal though, because it doesn't imitate Sam's earring, nor does it ever make weaponry of any kind. So it's not like the T-1000, for instance. With all that we know, let's finally break it down beat for beat and see what we actually know. In 1982, Norwegian outpost Thule discovers the thing and accidentally awakens it, causing the thing to rampage out of fear. Kate Lloyd manages to stop it from spreading at the cost of her own life. However, the main thing, in the form of a sled dog, escapes and reaches U.S. Outpost 31, where helicopter pilot R.J. McCready and chief mechanic Childs defeat it, once again costing Childs his life. In an undisclosed amount of time, U.S. Special Forces Captain J.F. Blake, under the command of Colonel Whitley, is sent in to investigate. While there, Blake encounters the thing and discovers that more research outposts have been set up to further excavate the thing's spacecraft. Blake also discovers that Colonel Whitley plans to spread the virus all over the world. In the final showdown, Blake is assisted by a helicopter pilot who turns out to be R.J. McCready, and together they take Whitley down, then fly off victorious. Now, here's what really happened. Kate manages to stop the thing, but the true thing, we'll just call him our boo thing. You my little boo thing. No. Just joking. We'll call him the Three Eyes in honor of who goes there. Three Eyes escapes in the form of a dog and heads to Outpost 31. Three Eyes is aware of what happened to Sam Thing and all other things because he's been telepathically speaking to each of his splinter cells, as it were. Three Eyes, as I mentioned before, is the one thing that we've seen in the movies but didn't really register it. It is the one character that continues in both movies. Well, all three. The 2 movies and the game. Being the only one left, Three Eyes makes it to Outpost 31 and begins to turn everyone into carriers. But by now, Three Eyes knows that they need to lay low, so they let their virus germinate in those that are more susceptible to the virus. Because remember, unless it uses brute force, there's only a chance of 50 to 70% chance someone will become infected. It tries to infect all the dogs, but is thwarted, but it doesn't manage to infect Blair during the autopsy. Blair, I imagine, is pretty resilient, so while it's working on Blair using its telepathic abilities, because remember, Blair touched that eraser to his lips, it uses its telepathic abilities, since it won't use brute force, to drive him mad, and that's why he goes nuts. It decides to overtake Bennings, but not by force like some would believe. Just before Bennings is taken, we see the dog corpse lying on a table, oozing off as if it's going to attack him. When Windows discovers Bennings' body being devoured, we're led to believe that's because Bennings is being assimilated. But what if, instead of Bennings being assimilated, his body was instead being devoured to hide the evidence, because the sleeper cells inside Bennings had already assimilated him? Three Eyes commanded that they take him while it continues to work on Blair, and after assimilation, they simply toss the husk to the remains of the dog thing for disposal. Windows, catching them in the act, sends out the alarm to Three Eyes, who knows that instead of trying to integrate Bennings, a new plan now needs to be enacted. Now remember, Three Eyes is telepathically speaking to all these things, We don't really know where Three Eyes is at the moment. My theory is that when Blair touched the eraser to his lips, Three Eyes went into Blair, and he's just working inside Blair, but he's using discretion instead of just all-out brutality, because that obviously would be too noticeable. Now, I know all this for a few reasons. One, because when Windows first discovers Benning's body, he's butt naked. If it tears through the clothes, then how was Thing Bennings clothed when they find him? Not to mention that the dog corpse is still laying on the table when they come to investigate, meaning that the clothes Thing Bennings is wearing is just a mimic also. The dog corpse is eventually torched to be sure, but that doesn't mean it's completely gone. Three Eyes decides, since it's been caught, an act of intimidation is needed. Its chess move, because yes, the chess scene is important in so many ways in this movie, its sole purpose now is to sacrifice Thing Bennings in order to cause fear, intimidation, and mistrust in everyone, which it does. As for the dog thing, well, the thing can still move even in cellular form. The scene when MacReady drops the petri dish and the blood streaks away, for instance, proves this. So even though they torch the majority of it, Three Eyes commands that a portion run and hide. We know this because of the end, but we'll get there. Who was taken first, Palmer or Norris? Doesn't really matter. But the shadow on the wall when Three Eyes in dog form enters someone's room at the beginning does look like Norris. John Carpenter did say he had someone not even in the movie, who not even playing in the movie, play this role so that the silhouette would appear ambiguous. So do with that what you will, but that's a little too meta. So let's bring this back down to if this were real, right? Palmer does share a joint with Childs, and that's even for an attempt at an infection. But Childs is too resilient to be infected without brute force. Good thing too, because this is the only time Childs comes close to becoming a thing. While both Palmer and Norris are prime candidates, Norris has a weak heart lowering his immunities, and Palmer is stoned all the time, which I'm not saying makes him weak, but an overabundance of anything is never healthy, right? We know that. Too much caffeine, too much food, too much sleep, too much anything is not healthy. So with neither men being tip-top, I'd say they'd both probably go around the same time. I'd probably say that they both got infected right around the same time, just in different ways. We don't actually see Palmer get infected, but I do think that's Norris's silhouette on the wall. With that said, I think Norris isn't even the thing when he dies. Like, he hasn't assimilated, it's just laying dormant in him. I think Palmer is. I think Norris is a carrier, and Norris dying is yet another unforeseeable variable for Three Eyes, because the thing can reanimate fresh corpses, which isn't something the thing can do in Who Goes There. I think John Carpenter actually took this from Horror Express. I think the thing in Horror Express directly influenced this aspect of what the thing can do. I think he just found that fascinating that the thing could create zombies, and in a way it is, right? Dr. Copper, at the time, is the biggest threat with his knowledge of how viruses work. So Three Eyes instructs the cell inside Norris to overtake the dead body and assassinate Copper, which it does, then fakes like it's trying to escape. Palmer points out the crawling head because yet again, in another chess move, Three Eyes faints as if it's once again being killed, which, knowing how human paranoia works by this time, Three Eyes knows that this will only cause more distrust amongst the crew, while shielding Palmer from suspicion since he's the one who pointed out the crawling head. I know I said it didn't matter who got taken first, Palmer or Norris, but honestly, like I said, it was Palmer. When Three Eyes approaches Norris in the room, it doesn't take him, just infects him. It's aware that Norris's heart is crap and doesn't want to bother with that. Blair, meanwhile, when they check up on him after he's been quarantined, is calmer than he was, but there's a noose hanging from the ceiling. I believe Blair is Three Eyes at this time, since he's already died from hanging himself. Three Eyes is surprisingly honest with MacReady when he tells him he's hearing strange things outside, since it was hypnotic suggestions that Three Eyes was using on Blair, which in turn led him to using the noose. Then Three Eyes reanimated the corpse of Blair to use as a husk. What surprises Three Eyes and infuriates him is how MacReady doesn't allow Blair back into the main compound. It just goes to show how much more Three Eyes has to learn about humans. He's trying to get MacReady to drop his guard by acting calm, but MacReady isn't having none of it, since there's a noose hanging there, for one, showing just how unhinged Blair must still be. Three Eyes purposely left the noose, then tells MacReady about the strange noises as a sort of way of tricking MacReady. Almost as to say, without saying, I'm so afraid for my life out here that look what I'm contemplating. What Three Eyes didn't count on is MacReady is the type to shoot a man on suspicion alone, which he does to Clark. I mean, Clark does try to stab him, but MacReady puts it between his eyes. So that says a lot, really, if you think about it. Now, Fuchs, like I said, is probably the only character who was close to figuring out how Three Eyes operates. Strengths, weaknesses, and abilities. When Blake finds the 5-page report in the game, I believe it's written by Fuchs. And it's that report we learn about the percentage chances of infection and the ability to mimic clothing. Fuchs spends a lot of time in the lab researching, and as stated, is the one who suggests everyone preparing their own meals, because he knows something about the thing's limitations now. But with all this research and contact he comes into with the thing, it makes sense that he's beginning to be taken. In the scene where he's alone just before he disappears, he's studying and a shadowy figure walks past the door. Fuchs follows to investigate, and all that's found of him later is his clothes. But MacReady speculates Fuchs burned himself alive to keep from being taken. This is mostly right, since the shadow Fuchs sees isn't really there. Three Eyes is about to instruct the cells to overtake Fuchs, but to do so quietly. Three Eyes projects a telepathic illusion to Fuchs, making him only believe he saw someone, so he'll follow it somewhere more isolated. Once there, the cells will activate and Fuchs will transform, but once again, Three Eyes didn't account for the determination of some humans. Fuchs, knowing he can't stop the transformation, in a final act of defiance, burns himself alive to stop his doppelganger from being born. Again, some speculate that maybe it was Norris who walked by that door, Palmer, but it was just an illusion. It was a mental projection that Three Eyes sent him to lead him outside. Palmer later on is discovered to be the thing and stopped, but before he is, Palmer kills Windows, who we then see reanimate, which is weird that Three Eyes would choose to do this and show such a big hand of its abilities. At least it would have been had any of them stopped to ponder about what they just saw. But instead, in a panic, they fry Windows too. It reanimates Norris as well. The reason I believe Three Eyes did this, because he knew tensions were already high from dealing with Palmer. It knows that showing them it can reanimate the dead is only going to cause them anxiety as opposed to causing them to reflect on what they've seen. The blood that streaks away when MacReady drops the dish from testing Palmer's blood with a hot needle is what infects Windows' corpse and reanimates it. I just thought I'd throw that in there. When they go to check on Blair again, they find him gone, and that underneath the shed he's been building a spacecraft in order to escape. So if Blair has been trapped this whole time, how has he been doing this? And who goes there? Blair can shapeshift and ooze under doors and other cracks. But I think in this, Blair isn't so much as doing that, as he's been using the dog corpse thing to ooze around and bring him materials. Since the dog corpse thing can become solid if it wants to, Three Eyes, who's now Blair, uses the dog corpse thing to dig out the cavern under the shed, then sends it out on fetch quests. But now that MacReady, Childs, Knowles, and Gary are blowing the place up, Three Eyes has run out of time, and he needs to find a way to flee or at the very least hibernate. It really is just a series of chess moves between Three Eyes and MacReady, and all out back and forth. Three Eyes tries to intimidate them with Bennings, MacReady torches him. Three Eyes tries to create mistrust, MacReady shoots Clark. Then, when it's revealed Clark wasn't even a thing, MacReady shows no remorse, which Palmer witnesses, meaning that Three Eyes witnesses MacReady's type of conviction, letting Three Eyes know what kind of man he's dealing with. Three Eyes tries to build a spaceship. MacReady burns all of Outpost 31 down. While doing this, the outpost loses power and Child splits, causing MacReady and the others, Gary and Knowles, to wonder if Charles has been taken. When setting up the final charges to blow up the rest of the outpost, Blair shows up now as Three Eyes and kills Gary and Knowles. MacReady fights off Dog Corpse thing and blows it up, bringing down Outpost 31. Child shows back up, where MacReady and him have a drink and Child freezes to death. At the end of the Thing video game, the MacReady-Blake meets isn't MacReady from the movie. He's the reanimated corpse of MacReady, and here's how I know. Childs froze to death. MacReady was probably on the verge of following suit, but because he's drinking that JB through most of the movie, his alcohol blood level is probably high, which helped him fight off the cold a little longer. He sees Three Eyes walking around as Blair, since the dog thing MacReady blew up wasn't Three Eyes, and decides to finish him off, which he does. And we know that that's dog thing because it's still got the dog DNA in it. It shows it. And so he decides to finish off Blair. He decides to finish off Three Eyes, which he does. But because he's cold and out of many options, he only kills the Blair husk and not Three Eyes. Three Eyes waits for MacReady to freeze to death, then reanimates him, and when Gen Inc., under the command of Dr. Sean Faraday, played by John Carpenter himself, come to conduct more research, MacReady, who is now Three Eyes, starts infecting them. All throughout the game, NPCs that Blake meets will allude to a stranger wandering around. This is MacReady, and when Blake and MacReady take down Whitley, Blake asks MacReady for his name. The way MacReady talks is almost zombie-like. It's like he's talking in a way he thinks people should talk. And I know this is a stretch, but think about it. If Childs froze to death, then how did Mac survive? I know I mentioned his alcohol blood level, but that's not enough to justify that length of time. MacReady has become the perfect host for Three Eyes, and is now flying back to civilization with Blake. The whole point of the Apocalypse trilogy was John Carpenter making 3 cosmic horror-styled movies that, despite the protagonist's best efforts, the world was at its end, and nothing really could be done to stop it. Carpenter had a hand in the development of the Thing game, and brought the first movie of the Apocalypse trilogy to a conclusion with a trilogy in a trilogy. Through 2 movies and a game, we've witnessed, without seeing, Three Eyes command cells of its own body telepathically. In a game of chess, the first game against Kate Lloyd, where the Thing learns to hone its skills of strategy, the second game is against R.J. MacReady, where it learns just how dangerous and unhinged humanity can be to achieve victory. And then the final game, it's against J.F. Blake, where by this time, the Thing has learned the perfect strategy of misdirection so it can finally escape. What's really fascinating about this was it was trying to get home. Again, it is highly aggressive, even in Who Goes There. It is extremely aggressive in both Horror Express and even this, 1982's John Carpenter's The Thing. But my final analysis of this story is that the end was inevitable, but it is a really interesting trilogy within a trilogy. that's my theory and review of The Thing, both movies and game. I hope you Golden Wonders liked it as much as I loved making it for y'all. Please don't forget to leave a like, share, and if you're new, subscribe to my channel. I know that some of y'all are waiting for me to finish the 4th part of my retro review series, the best RPGs Sega ever released for Genesis. And I promise, now that I'm feeling a lot better, I'm gonna get to working on it more right now. I've got footage and some such stuff, and it'll be out soon. Y'all don't forget to sign my guest book. Let me know what you thought of this video. It really would mean a lot. And before I go, I want everyone here to know that every last one of you out there are special to me. I treasure every last one of you, regardless of whatever our real world beliefs and opinions may be. While here, we share a love, we share a passion for games, movies, literature, art, and all sorts of wonderful things. When we are here, we are all equal. Doesn't matter what we believe. Doesn't matter what our opinions are and what truths we hold and this and that. None of that matters because this channel's not about that. We are all the same, and everyone is welcome. And from my heart and soul, I want to thank you for joining me. Y'all come back now. Stay golden.